The first time she saw him, he was perched on a rocky outcrop overlooking the valley, the wind tangling his dark hair across his forehead. The townspeople had warned her to stay away from the mountain man. He was poor, strange, and lived in a weathered cabin that barely kept out the winters, but something about him called to her. He moved with a quiet confidence, each step sure and deliberate, as if the mountains themselves had taught him how to walk. When he noticed her watching from the path below, he gave her a small nod, and she felt a jolt of recognition, as if he had seen something inside her that no one else had ever noticed. Her life had always been gilded and predictable. Her father, a wealthy merchant, had arranged for her to meet men who could increase their fortunes, men who wore fine coats and spoke in polite rehearsed sentences. But every time she met them, she felt nothing but emptiness. The mountain man was different. There was no pretense in him, no calculated charm. There was just honesty, and a quiet strength that made her heart ache. Over the next few weeks, she found reasons to visit the cliffs, always pretending to study the wildflowers, to sketch the rocks, to breathe in the clean mountain air. He began to notice her more. One afternoon, a sudden storm blew in, and she found herself soaked to the bone, shivering, unable to find the path home. He appeared as if from the mist itself, holding out a thick woolen coat. "Here," he said simply. "You'll catch your death if you wander like this." She hesitated, then accepted it, the rough fabric pressing against her drenched dress. She was overwhelmed by the warmth, not just from the coat, but from the look in his eyes, steady and unwavering. They began walking together along narrow trails, her hand brushing against his by accident, her pulse racing every time it did. He spoke little, but when he did, it was about the mountains, the stars, the wind, and the small wonders that most people overlooked. He laughed rarely, but when he did, it was a sound that made the world feel softer, gentler. She realized that in his presence, she could breathe, truly breathe, in a way she never had amid the heavy silks and formalities of her home. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the peaks, painting the clouds in gold and rose, he turned to her with a look that made her heart stutter. "You shouldn't go back there," he said softly. "There's nothing for you there but rules and cages." She stared at him, understanding suddenly that she had never felt so alive as she did here, with him, with the wind whipping around them, with the world laid bare and wild. And in that instant, she made a decision that would shock her family and the townspeople alike. She would leave the comforts of her old life behind. She would marry him. It wasn't a whim, nor a fleeting passion, it was a calling. The mountain man, poor and untamed, had opened her eyes to a freedom she hadn't even known existed. And when she reached for his hand, he took it without hesitation, gripping it firmly, as if to say, "Then we walk this path together, whatever comes." In that moment, as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, she realized she had found not just love, but a life she was meant to live. The months that followed their marriage were nothing like she had imagined, and yet everything she had ever wanted. She left behind the grand halls of her father's estate, the clinking silver and endless etiquette, for a life shaped by the mountains and the man she loved. Every day was a lesson in freedom, in simplicity, in discovering the world through hands and eyes that had never known indulgence. He taught her to climb jagged cliffs, to track deer through thick pines, to fish in the icy streams that cut through the valleys. She learned to move with quiet patience, to read the clouds, the wind, and the stars, and with every step, the bond between them grew stronger. One crisp morning, he beckoned her to rise before dawn. The horizon glowed pale pink, the first tendrils of light brushing the peaks with soft fire. "I want to show you something," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. She followed him in silence, boots crunching on the frozen earth, hearts synchronized in anticipation. They climbed higher than they ever had, past familiar cliffs and winding trails, to a plateau shrouded in mist. There, above the clouds, the world fell away into a soft white sea, endless and ethereal. Her breath caught at the sight, the beauty almost too vast to hold in her chest. "Look," he whispered, stepping forward to a cluster of moss-covered stones that formed the outline of a gate. Ancient runes, worn by centuries, shimmered faintly in the pale sunlight, as if waiting for someone to awaken them. "This has been forgotten for ages," he said, placing his calloused hand on the stone. The surface vibrated faintly beneath his touch, and the air around them shimmered like heat on a summer road. She watched, heart hammering, as the gate slowly swung open, revealing a kingdom suspended in the clouds. Crystal towers reflected the soft pink light, rivers of liquid silver wound between floating gardens, and terraces of flowers glowed as though lit from within. It was a world of impossible beauty, untouched by time or greed. Her eyes filled with tears as he took her hand, his grip firm and steady. "This is ours to discover," he said simply. "The world forgot it, but it didn't vanish. It's waiting for someone who belongs here." She turned to him, laughter spilling through her tears, a mixture of disbelief and joy. Every risk she had taken to leave her old life behind, every fearful glance she had cast over her shoulder, every step up the cliffs, all of it had led to this moment. In his eyes, she saw the same awe she felt, and something deeper: pride, tenderness, and love that anchored her even as the world around them floated in impossible grace. They stepped through the gate together, hearts racing, fingers intertwined. She could feel the pulse of this lost kingdom, ancient and alive, welcoming them both. Every step across the glowing bridges and flowered terraces was a step into a world that had been waiting for them. She realized, with a shiver of delight, that her life had transformed not because of wealth or comfort, but because she had chosen courage, love, and the unknown. And in that instant, she understood that this man, this poor mountain man who had no fortune except his heart and his knowledge of the mountains, was the key not just to her freedom, but to a wonder beyond anything she had ever dreamed. The first time they stepped fully into the kingdom, it felt as though the clouds themselves had embraced them. Every bridge of shimmering stone, every terrace of glowing flowers, seemed alive with a soft hum that resonated through their bones. The young woman's eyes widened with wonder at the crystal towers, catching the soft light of the floating rivers, and she reached instinctively for his hand, needing his presence to anchor her in a world so impossibly beautiful. The mountain man smiled, his eyes glinting like sunlight on water, and squeezed her hand back, as if to say, "We are meant to be here." They wandered slowly, exploring terraces and walkways that twisted like ribbons through the clouds. Flowers sang in soft whispers as they brushed past, petals opening to the touch, releasing bursts of fragrance that made her dizzy with delight. He showed her hidden gardens where rivers of silver sparkled, and pools where the water reflected not just their faces but the stars of distant skies. She laughed, spinning in a circle as he lifted her gently into his arms, carrying her across a bridge that stretched like a beam of light into a distant tower. Every step they took seemed to awaken the kingdom, as though the world itself recognized their arrival and responded with joy. At the heart of the kingdom, they discovered ruins of an ancient palace, its arches adorned with carvings of creatures she had never imagined. He told her stories of the people who had once lived there, how they had been driven away by fear and greed, leaving the place suspended in legend and mist. She traced her fingers over the delicate stonework, feeling the weight of centuries and the echo of lives long gone. And yet, in the presence of this mountain man, the one who had led her here with unwavering faith, the past seemed less like loss and more like preparation, for them, for the rebirth of this forgotten place. As night fell, the kingdom glowed under a sky brighter than any stars she had ever seen, constellations spinning slowly in the endless heavens. He led her to a balcony of crystal and silver, where the wind brushed their faces and the clouds swirled below like liquid light. She leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm, and he held her close, wrapping his arms around her with a possessive tenderness that spoke of love, protection, and devotion. "We can bring it back," he whispered, voice low and certain. "Together, we can give it life again." Her laughter spilled into the night, mingling with the soft music of the floating gardens, and she felt a joy she had never known in her gilded past. He kissed her forehead, then her lips, and she clung to him, dizzy with happiness and gratitude. Every fear, every doubt she had carried from her old life, melted away in the glow of the kingdom and in the warmth of his embrace. They stood there, hand in hand, hearts beating as one, knowing that they had not just discovered a lost world, but had found each other completely. In that suspended kingdom among the clouds, she realized she had married far more than a poor mountain man. She had married a guide, a protector, and the keeper of wonders. And as the first light of dawn touched the towers, sparkling like diamonds, she understood that their story had only just begun, and that together, they could turn a lost kingdom into a home, and a life filled with love, adventure, and limitless possibility.